Good afternoon. This is Randy Brunson with Centurion Advisory Group. We are here on Gwinnett Business RadioX for this edition of the Stewarding Family Wealth podcast. With me in the studio today, two wonderful dear friends, Mr. Randy Redner, the Executive Director of the Community Foundation of Northeast Georgia.
Look at you, Randy. Wow.
How's that? Is that good?
Yeah. And you got my name right. Randy. Randy introducing Randy.
That's true.
Good.
That's true. Better than that, though.
Better than that.
In the studio with us.
Yes.
Is the lady on your team that actually knows what's going on.
Exactly.
You know that phrase where you want to talk to the guy in charge of the lady that knows what's going on? All right, so this is Britt. This is Britt Ramroop. And
Good job.
we just learned that your husband's name is Randy as well?
It is, yes.
Oh, my
so
word.
I'm surrounded by Randys.
Yeah.
You really
And
are.
they're all great guys. She
You really
decided
are.
to marry one of them. Right?
We really are. So we're going to spend this episode and one just following it, telling stories and talking specifically about what our listeners can do to have an impact.
Correct.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And but what I've learned is that all of us like stories, right? We all have a story. Sometimes we get to tell it, sometimes we don't. But let's just tell stories. Britt, is it okay if I start with you?
Go for it.
Okay, so we were talking, but just before, Mike. By the way, Mike's behind the. I started to say behind the camera. He's actually behind the laptop over there, engineering this thing, and Amanda's keeping us all in line. So, thank you both for your work here on our behalf through Gwinnett Business RadioX. But we learned that you're originally from Wyoming.
I am originally from Wyoming.
So
yes.
tell us more.
I was raised in Cheyenne, one of two girls. Both my parents are educators, were educators. They are since retired and now are full-time grandparents. My sister still lives in Cheyenne with my parents, so she's got full-time babysitters until they get so exhausted that they just can't stand anymore. And then my children are here begging for Amma and Papa to come to town because they're seriously missing their Amma and Papa. But they're having a good time, yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So how did you end up? Because it's a far piece from
Yes.
from
Not
Metro
a straight
Atlanta,
shot,
from
yeah.
Gwinnett County to
Yeah.
Cheyenne, Wyoming. How did you end up in Georgia?
A wing and a prayer.
Okay.
Really, I have ping-ponged across the United States. So I left Wyoming for college, and I went to college out in Tacoma, Washington.
Okay.
So just south of Seattle. And after I graduated, I decided I was going to go exploring, and I ping-ponged to the other Washington, and I moved to Washington, D.C., and took an apprenticeship with a theater company there in D.C., and when that was done, I went on tour with a theater company out of Philadelphia and toured the Southeast.
Wow.
And through that tour, I came across Atlanta, had never visited. We did quite a bit of traveling when I was growing up because parents were always going to education conferences across the U.S., but the Southeast wasn't someplace we'd ever been. So I said, I'd like to tour there while what I'm doing my living, right? Make my living. And so came through Atlanta one night, and I'm a sucker for skylines, and it was nighttime, and it was all lit up, and it was beautiful. After the tour ended, I went home and spent the summer at home working. And then I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, okay, I'm out of college. I'm not tied down any place. What am I going to do?
Not a lot happening in Wyoming at that time.
Especially when it comes to theater. There was absolutely,
yeah.
there was the community theater playhouse. That was it. That was not where I needed to be.
Sure.
So I told my parents, I think I'm going to move to Atlanta. So my dad drove cross country with me, and we found a place here in Atlanta. We went up to D.C., got my stuff out of storage, and the rest is history. That was 2000. So how did
you, the whole thing with theater.
Yeah.
So, now that you mentioned, like there's nothing in Wyoming except some cows, I guess.
Right.
I don't know. but sorry to the one listener that Randy Brunson has.
Interstate 15. Interstate 15. It goes through Wyoming.
Okay, there
it
you
does,
go.
Yes.
So how did you fall in love with theater?
My mom, her job was an elementary music teacher.
Okay.
So really, the arts were always kind of there. My
Sure.
dad was like, I was in a play when I was in high school. In his little podunk town in Illinois, right?
There you go.
Of 500 people. But the arts was always a part of my life growing up. And the community theater, I mean, that raised me. That was the thing to do, was
Sure.
to go audition for the shows. I was part of the children's choir when I was in town growing
Yeah.
up, and that's where I went. And then I went to college, and I was at a liberal arts school. And so I was just dabbling.
It was always around.
Yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And finally, my advisor was like, if you want to graduate, you need to declare a major. And I said, well, what makes the most sense?
Yeah.
And he goes, well, and I said, what makes the most sense? And he said, well, you have most of your credits in this theater and the arts, so let's head that way. And I was like, okay. So I graduated and still didn't know what I wanted to do.
That's okay, but at least you graduated.
Yeah,
Exactly. Check that off. There you go.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So you've been here about 15, 16 years. So what brought you through all this? So you found work, and it sounds like do you still do some because there are all kinds of local theaters.
There are.
Duluth,
yes.
Lawrenceville, just in Gwinnett County, there's several.
Yes.
Okay. Do you still do some volunteer work there, or do you still do you do any acting or do any behind the scenes volunteering or any of that kind of thing?
I haven't in the last 3 years, but prior to coming to the Community Foundation, I was working at Aurora Theater for 10 years.
Okay.
So I've got some strong ties with the folks there at Aurora.
Good. And I believe we have our tickets for the Christmas canteen.
Perfect. It's going to be great. It's in their new space.
Yes.
Little plug
What
for
were the
them.
couple of things that you did at the Aurora, right? Because when you moved here, you started at Stone Mountain.
I did start at Stone Mountain, yep.
Yep, did Stone Mountain Park.
And then I taught.
But you found a husband at Stone Mountain Park,
I did,
right?
man, and so I was never able to leave.
Ah,
Yeah.
that's where she found Randy.
Well, I was going to ask that story, but you have to be really careful with that, because typically I'm fairly bold in asking questions, and I love the story. How did you guys meet?
Right.
Okay. But you have to be really careful. The good news is only one time in 40 years of asking that question has anyone said we met at a bar one night. and that kind of thing, or we met in the mosh pit or whatever.
That's right. That's right.
So you met your husband when you were working at Stone Mountain.
Yes, he was head of the AV department, so all the City Sound and the 4D Theater. So we were right in line, and I was working with the entertainment department for all of their shows.
Cool.
So,
cool. Now, so what brought you over then? How long have you been with the Community Foundation? What brought you here? And tell us about your role at the Community Foundation.
Yeah, my role is Director of Fundholder Experience, and it's about 3 years old. It's as old as I am at the Community Foundation.
Yep. Brand new position, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was brought over really to help deepen our relationships with our fundholders, because the best way to give back to the community is really knowing and understanding the community.
Sure.
And so what better way to do that than team up with me? And so I get to know about the passions and the hearts of all of our fundholders, so I can help connect people who care with the causes that matter in the communities in which they live. Because it's not just Gwinnett anymore. We're in North Fulton, we're in Forsyth, we got Pennsylvania, we're all over the map.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's fun.
That is so cool. Let's go, Mr. Redner, sir.
Yeah. So, with that, though, Randy, before we jump over and I have to start making up stuff, but, for Britt's role, when we created that role, it's about this journey of generosity. Right.
Yes.
And and yours is about stewarding families' wealth, right?
That's right.
And
that's right.
And it is that journey of generosity that they are blessed. They run great businesses. They want to go do something good, but who guides them in that, right? And you think about a any community, right? And I've been at it for a long time, and you go, they've got CPAs for this. They've got financial advisors for that. They've got doctors for this. They got they got all of that. But there's nobody coming alongside that family, and it's really we're asking them to expose two critical things: their heart, and their money. Right. The things that people tend to hold dear and not and have those conversations, and then take them on that journey as fast as they want to go. And some families move really fast, and some, it's a little bit longer. So share one good story, and then you can pick on me, Randy. But share one good.
Put me on the spot. One good spot.
Right. Yeah.
There's 3 years worth of amazing stories.
Right.
There really are. Gosh, they come from all different levels. I think probably one of my favorites was over this last year, seeing the hearts of our families together and combining their wealth together to complete something in our community. And Oakland Meadow School, which is our special needs school here in Gwinnett County, needed help with a playground. Their playground was over 30 years old, trying to roll wheelchairs across wood chips, and they needed to get the rubber
These are
turf.
special needs kids, right?
Yeah, how do you get them to the playground that's 30 years old that really probably was not actually built for special needs kids? There was nothing about it that said, we're going to support this special needs community. And so they reached out and they said, we need this money. This is so much money. It wasn't that much money.
That is an interesting observation, but carry on.
And so, but I mean, they were hesitant to ask. It was during COVID. We were trying to connect families in the community with food resources and bills, and and so they were like, it's really at the bottom of the list. But if you know anybody, so I picked up the phone and I called 7 or 8 different fund holders who I knew that special needs held a special place in their heart.
Yeah.
And together, those 7 families in less than a week's time said, yep, I'm in. Count me in for X amount of money. And then together, those families were able to pay for that. So there's a lot of good, and being able, and they wouldn't have known that otherwise, right? So being able to connect those dots with those families to be like, you don't have to pay for the whole thing. But if you're interested, just a little bit of portion, and then your money goes even further to do really good things.
And so that's a case study in living out your tagline, your slogan, whatever it's called, but it's connecting people that care with causes that matter, and that's exactly what happened in that story.
Yeah.
There's a lady, I'll call her Lynn. That's her name, and that's all I'll say. But she will never be able to spend all of her money. She's a client. Okay.
Right. Yep.
She's in her 70s, great habits. Here she is, ended up, and I mean, she gives money away. But here's her situation.
And you make her so much money, she can't give it away fast enough, right?
Well,
the stock market's been on a good ride here, Randy, for 5 years or so.
My standard response to that is the market's been kind to us.
Okay, good. It has been very kind to all of us.
I've had almost nothing to do with that. We are very grateful. We have phenomenal clients, and so.
Yep.
But Lynn gives. But I can tell you that she. She has significant capacity to give. However, she is not completely familiar with where best to give.
Correct.
There's some things that are specific to her. She gives some stuff to causes that matter to her, and she gives money to her church and some things like this. But I do numbers in my head. I ratios.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Her giving is maybe 1 to 2% of her
capacity
of her asset base.
Yep.
And it's growing significantly faster than that, and has for years.
Right.
She'll never outlive all of her money, and she has no children. The nieces and nephews. There's this whole question around that we're studying. Sure, you can transfer money. How do you transfer values? How do you transfer character? Because money is an inanimate object,
right?
And all it does is reflect the character and the preferences and the temperament of the person whose hand it rests.
Right.
That's all it does. Is it reflects that person.
Yep.
Okay. And so she's a case study in okay, how do we help her connect the dots to other opportunities out here to give? And we've done that in 1 or 2 cases, but we need to be more intentional about that. So thank you for sharing that story, Britt.
Yeah.
Randy,
because that's exactly what we sell, right? If you want to look at it at the Community Foundation, our added value is the community knowledge. Right. I was having breakfast with somebody this morning, and they go, Randy, why do you have a board of 40 people? That's just crazy. And I said, because our stock and trade is community knowledge. Yes. And these people, these leaders in our community are in all different parts of the community in all different ways, and they bring information back so we can understand what's going on in our school system, what's going on in healthcare, what's going on in the arts, right?
Right.
And all of that. And we can bring it to folks like Lynn and our fund holders and say, hey, we know you're interested in this, or let us show you something that you may not even know about, and do you want to get involved in stuff like that? So that's our stock and trade, what we get to do.
Good. Well, tell us about you. As I recall, you grew up in Georgia. Is that right?
No. I'm born in Elmira, New York, and we did Elmira, Rochester, Pittsburgh, Cleveland. Moved from Cleveland in 1971 to Atlanta. So been here long enough to marry a Southerner, go to Southern schools, graduate from Southern colleges, pay Southern taxes. So I'm
fully acculturated.
Exactly, Randy. So from there. So
sounds like your dad was a corporate gypsy. It's what I call it.
Yeah, coming out of World War II, Dad was a great salesman, and so he would go into one company through all of those years until he got to Atlanta, and then we started a family business some 50 years ago that we're into the third generation now. But Dad would, go into a community, fire all the salespeople, hire the new ones, train them all up, stay for about 3 years, and then they would move
Do it again.
Came to Atlanta, did that in Atlanta, and then they wanted us to go to San Francisco, and that's where my dad said, nope, we're getting off the bus. We really like, kind of like Britt, we really like Atlanta, and we're just going to stay right here, and started a family business.
It's a good spot to be, and it's a good spot to be in. It's with Gwinnett at close to 1 million people, or right around 1 million people.
Right.
Yep.
It is still a relatively small business community.
Yep.
It really is. It's a great local community to be in. So your career track, because as an adult, you've been with the Community Foundation for. Judy Waters was the original executive.
No, she wasn't the original, but there was only a few, right? So I think I'm number 5 in the list, and been finishing up my 7th year there.
Okay, so you've been there about 7 years, but just tell us your family, your business background.
Yeah, for me on the business side, or the career side, 20-year corporate career. And then Randy, Y2K, the new millennium, whatever it was, but really for me a faith journey, starting in about 1990. I mean, I'm pretty sure God was working on me before then. Sure. I just wasn't smart enough to pay attention. Well, right. But in 1999, I sat down with my boss. I was in corporate America, doing on the track, right, climbing the ladder, everything that the stock options, the bonuses,
all the cool stuff,
all the cool toys, But I just got for me, a calling, and said, I need you to set that down. Despite all the work you're doing at your church and your volunteering and all that, I really need you to put that aside. And that started at late 1999. In 2000, I walked away from corporate America. We relocated back to Gwinnett County because my wife is from Gwinnett County, graduated from Norcross High School. Okay. And I said, hey, I'm going to go into, nonprofit, and we'll just see, where that takes us. And my brothers, my family business is in Roswell, and my brothers called me and said, hey, you keep talking about this is what you want to do. Obviously it is. You moved back here. You don't have a job, right? Let's get back to work. And we are looking for an executive director for Habitat for Humanity in North Fulton at that time. And so that was 2000. That was the fall of 2000, and that affiliate for Habitat was $1 million in debt. Wow. The board had no idea. They hadn't filed taxes in 3+ years. The board had no idea, right? They didn't know, right, what they had. So went in there 3 years later. We were affiliate of the year for our size in the country. We went from building 2 homes to 20 homes, and this is 2000 to 2000. I was there from 2000 to 2005. In North Fulton, right? The hottest real estate market, highest, and people look at that community and go, well, they got everything they need. But there is an issue with homelessness and that there. And the community understood that, and they embraced, once they knew about Habitat in the right way, they embraced what we were doing and, jumped right in. And then I lost my dad to cancer in 1996. And I lost my dad in about 90 days. And so I had an opportunity.
From diagnosis to death.
Yes.
Wow.
Right. And,
that makes
and he was just coming out of World War II, one of those military guys that, hey, I know I'm feeling fine. I can power through it. And by the time he really let doctors take a look, it was too late, right? Mm-hmm. And 90 days later, he's gone. And I had a chance. A gentleman on my board at Habitat was a C-suite executive at the American Cancer Society, who has their national home office here in Atlanta, and say, Randy, would you ever? And I said, Bob, you never say never. When and about a year or so later, he said, you're going to get a call in about 5 minutes, and we want you to come run the largest event in the world that the American Cancer Society does, which is in Gwinnett County.
Wow.
And I said, what's that? And he goes, Relay for Life. And I go, what's that? I had no idea the largest event was here, or what it was, right? And they were crazy enough, Randy, to hire me back in 2005. So I started there in 2005 here, in Gwinnett for a number of years. And then I got the opportunity to run the state of Georgia for the American Cancer Society for about 3 or 4 years from there, and then an opportunity to jump to the United Methodist Children's Home, which was founded in 1867. A few years after the Civil War in Norcross here. The first home for the United Methodist Children's Home was in Norcross, and then was relocated to Decatur. So I was there. I was part of the team that created the strategy to actually sell the United Methodist Children's Home, the 80 acres, because foster care is no longer about taking kids and sending them to one place, right? It's about keeping those foster care kids in community, right? So we had these 80 acres. We had multi-millions of dollars literally buried out back, right?
Right.
It is,
out in the woods and the trees.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so convert that into about, I think, $35 million, and then let's go do bigger and bolder work with that money. So while I was finishing my work there, that's when Judy Waters called me and said, "Hey, Randy, how would you like to come home?" Right? I really am thinking about retiring this time. And that was 7 years ago, and it's been quite the ride with the Community Foundation, because we get into everything, right?
Yeah.
We are.
Well, that allows you to touch all those. I mean, because you were working with some specific
right.
NGOs, ministries, nonprofits, however you want to phrase those.
Correct.
You were there specifically, and through the Community Foundation, you were able to interact with all of them and direct those, your fund holders, to those based on what Britt, of their heart and their passion, what sort of turns their crank or means something to them, right?
Which is amazing, because we're not program specific.
No.
So we don't have to get up and worry in the morning about, is somebody going to have enough food on their table? Do we have that coming in? What's our budget look like? Oh no, it's shoestring and we need to get more boxes of this, that, or the other thing. We get to help connect the resources.
Yeah, so we're working a level above that and saying, what are the key issues, both locally, regionally, nationally, internationally, right? And obviously we, like everybody else, the word of the year, pivot, right? And we had to pivot with everybody else when the pandemic hit, of how we go about our work.
And I will tell you, just it's very exciting for me, because this morning, just before I came over here, I was sitting with a young couple, and
they're all young to me, man.
Brother, I'm telling you, you know what? You live long enough, everybody's younger than you are. But it sure beats the alternative.
Exactly.
If we have this day, there's something for us to do.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So, but I was sitting with this young couple, and he's in the process of buying a business, and so they were talking about this. Is for us, for Sandy and me. This is so exciting. All right, because in our work, we can apply whatever gifts and talents we've been given, skill sets, so on and so forth, to help other people do a variety of things financially. Right. What do you want? What are you wanting? Those three questions: who are you? Where are you headed? Why are you here? Right? Philosophy 101. And the more clarity we have about those three questions, the simpler life becomes. But that's off the subject. But I was visiting with them, and it's gratifying to be able to apply our gifts and skills and talents to situations to help people do well. But what is very exciting is to encourage people, or to listen to them talk about, yes, we know we're going to be fine. Okay, but to shift their focus from their own financial statement, from their own cash flow, from their own situation, to direct it outside of there. And so here was this young couple saying, we want to take some of our business revenue, and he said, I think we're going to set up an account at Community Foundation. You know this person, and we want to do some things in our local community, and the two went on. It was wonderful, glorious. And here's the gift. The gift is that Sandy and I, at our office, we have the opportunity to participate in some small way in helping them dream and plan and think about and prepare for just a life incredibly well lived. Okay,
Absolutely. Yeah,
because there's this letter that was. We're going to wrap up and go into the second episode in a minute, but there's this letter that was written. This goes back to ancient history. Goes back before
you and I. Is that what you're saying? Ancient history.
It goes before. It is.
We're back there with Mike's time, right?
You and I were born before dirt. But anyhow, even before what's called classical antiquity. This goes back to probably 700 or 800 BC. All right, and there's a fella. He was a writer and a speaker, and his name was Jeremiah, and
Name dropper.
Yeah. Well, okay. And some of us people had been hauled off. And, the history of the world is whoever's big and tough picks on people that are not quite as big and tough. And if the people are sick, they kill them. Okay. And they mistreat the women in ways I'm not going to describe on the air. And they haul off the able-bodied as slaves. That's the history of the world.
Yep.
Okay, so that's what had happened in Jeremiah's world. His people had been hauled off as slaves by a large, aggressive national power. Okay, so he wrote them this letter and sent it by one of his lieutenants. And in the letter he said, here's what I want you to do. Now keep in mind, they're foreigners, they're strangers in this land. He said, I want you to settle down and build houses. All right, and raise your sons and daughters, find husbands for your wives and give your sons in marriage. And he said, I want you to seek the peace and the prosperity of the city in which you live. Because if that city prospers, you too will prosper.
Correct.
And that's you know that story. You know that letter.
Right.
You probably didn't where it's found, but that's what you're about, is together, working together. When we have the opportunity to interact with clients, come to us and says, what do I do with my stuff?
Right.
Okay. Would you please help me? I have this, so on and so forth. And working together, we can help direct them. Okay, here's some phenomenal things you can do to seek the peace and the prosperity of this community, to bring order and safety, to help those who are at a point where they simply cannot help themselves, to offer encouragement, to offer hope, to offer inspiration, and let people know that they do have a great future. So let's wrap up this one. This is Randy Brunson with Centurion Advisory Group on the podcast Stewarding Family Wealth, hosted by our wonderful, glorious friends Mike and Amanda here on Gwinnett Business RadioX. See you shortly.